ever because of the stop-start nature of it. It's hard this year because Joseph's injured. It's hard because of trying to incorporate, Josetu and Castro into the team without playing preseason games before bringing them into the team in this situation. They just came off the bench in that part of the season before the pandemic. It's all difficult. It's too early to say the talent acquisition process has not been good enough. I'm not going there until the end of the season, until we get to see more of Josetu, more of Castro. I think they'd be much further along if you didn't have that break. I think they'd be in a better spot. So I'm not saying that I completely disagree with Bernd about the value of good GMs. I do. But I don't think the talent acquisition process is broken yet. I think it's too early to tell. That's where my head's at on that anyway.
Yeah, because you're talking about a handful of games with a large gap in between because of the pandemic. And so I think that technically you're still very early in your season, regardless of whatever form it currently is in. So I think that it's still part of what folks just need to do. They need to look at what they're seeing and just take it as a part of a larger picture that hasn't been completed yet. We're not down that road in July. In a standard July, we would be further down the road than we are in this July.
Yeah, for sure. You would have a whole lot more games under your belt, definitely. Yeah. The debate about who knocked my internet out has included the referee crew with Clippers, J.J. Williams kicking the internet down. I'm going to go with the ref crew.
Yeah.
Maybe they found me. I don't know.
Well, no. Well, it would have taken Fotis Bazakis 15 minutes to actually find the cable to make sure it was the right one.
Well, no, it would have taken him, and he's very thorough. So, I mean, he would have been able to probably find out where I'm at. So he's had time since the game. We're kidding. I disagreed with the way that the referee handled some moments in the match that were big moments. I think the fact that it was his 5th MLS match showed at times yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And
yes.
There's no way around that. Guys have to get games to get better. This just goes to the big topic that I've said for years, well before doing this show. The level of play, the pace of play in this country has surpassed, the level of coaching education and development has surpassed referee development. U.S. Soccer has to put more resources towards developing referees. Because it's a U.S. Soccer issue. It's not an MLS issue. They're not MLS employees. It's a U.S. Soccer Federation issue. You need better referees, more referees at all levels. It's not just an MLS issue. It's not just a USL Championship issue. It's your local youth league issue. It's your state cup issues. It's all of it. There has to be a broad plan to address referee development. Because you need more referees, you need younger referees breaking through. You do have to expect that they're going to not be as strong as a FIFA referee in Game 5. Totally get that. But you want the baseline level to get better. So they come in and they're more prepared and they're better off in those moments. That's what we want to see. Every league, every country has referee issues. I think the U.S. has bigger ones because of that development of the game here at such a fast rate in the last 20 years. I don't think the referee side has been developing as quickly, and it needs to catch up. Chris Ashley might be hosting the party after the MLS's back tournament. He says he got Columbus at plus 2,500 before the tournament to win this thing.
Far out.
That's a pretty good marker there, Chris Ashley.
Nicely done. And side note, Chris is a part of the first Greenville Triumph Weekly, and that'll be out this weekend with USL League One getting some home matches. And another USL note, Taylor Gant from our friends over at GPB, he got to catch up with Darren Van Tassel, and so we'll be posting that interview to the network as well. So Charleston Battery Weekly will be up this weekend, Greenville Triumph Weekly up this weekend, Taylor's one-on-one with Darren Van Tassel up this weekend as well. So anticipate that, and an interview with the commissioner of NISA, John Prutch. So we got a bunch of stuff coming up this weekend. While Jason and I are at the Fraction for Atlanta United 2 and Memphis 901 FC.
Yep, we'll talk about
as
that
well.
Too. Yep, all kinds of stuff.
There's stuff.
I still got stuff, John. I'm not done.
And I do too. So whenever you're done with stuff, I got stuff. So
yeah, I know you got stuff, but the Twitch people are very vocal, and the party gets a little wild in Twitch. Adam from 816 from Kansas City. From afar, it looks like they lack a system. Talking about Atlanta United. I've had this conversation. We touched on it a little bit with Southern Fried Soccer yesterday. I think the way Atlanta wants to play, it's ambitious. It's a 3-4-3 is not easy. It's maybe the most intricate, the most complicated system to play because of all the rotations, especially in transition. We saw that on the goal the Red Bulls scored. It wasn't sharp, and that's why you had that space. I think it's even more difficult in the situation that you combine with where Atlanta United is right now, where they've been with training, where they've been with match preparation. And I think Frank de Boer is trying to use the 3-4-3 to be very attack-minded and very aggressive. If you look at how far up the field Franco Escobar and Fernando Meza push, they're not doing that on their own. That's part of the system. They get forward a lot. When one of them goes, you have to create, at least a line of two. The other one has to tuck in with Miles Robinson. Late in the game yesterday, throw that to the side because you're trying to find an equalizer. So, Miles was the free safety back at midfield. Everybody else was pushed up. That's a different situation. In general, when one of the center backs goes, you want the other one to tuck in with Robinson. You maybe even want one of your central midfielders to hang back, create a triangle there, or one of your wingbacks to hang back. All of those different decisions have to be done on the fly. You have to play games to get the best out of that shape. But I don't think, and Bernd Dursberger was talking about it, I don't think Frank necessarily prefers slow build-up possession. I think he did early last season because he was trying to, I think, instill that in the team. And Tata Martino did it in 2018 as well. They went from being a much more vertical team in 17 to a stronger possession team in 18. Frank is using the possession a little differently to try to stay organized, but he's taken those shackles off. If you want to call them shackles, he's unleashed this team a little bit more as his time here in Atlanta has went. Last year, they were risky at times. I think this year they're even more risky. And I'm usually not the one to say dial it back a little bit, but I think in this tournament, because of that nature of not having games and not being in the same level of preparation, that maybe you needed to dial it back and be a little more conservative. I don't know how that would have played with people, though. I don't know how people would have reacted to that. So it's complicated. 3-4-3 is complicated. The way they want to play is complicated. It is not something that many people have grown up playing in. Johan Cruyff was criticized for it when he did it. Even in the Dutch school, he went from 4-3-3 to 3-4-3, and a lot of people were like, no, you can't do that. It doesn't work. It's too risky. You can't do it. You can, and we've seen it work. We've also seen it not work. I would argue that it worked really well with Joseph Martinez. It worked really well early this season, and that would be the Motagua series because that's what we saw, and I really liked where this team was. I really liked how they looked. Even the game in Honduras. I think you got a good result in that one on the road in CONCACAF. Looked great in the second leg. This team right now is missing that big piece, and they had to sit for 4 months. They've lost all that continuity. Maybe you could have come into this tournament and been more defensive, more counterattack based, safer. It's not how the club wants to play. It's not how Frank wants to play. They're risky. And when you're risky, you're going to get burned. You haven't been burned that much, though. You've given up a goal a game in MLS play. You've given up a goal a game. You gave up a goal on a set piece in Nashville. Bad marking, bad reaction on the set piece. The Cincinnati game, you give up a long-distance goal in the regular season to Yuya Kubo. You gave up a goal in transition to Red Bulls early on a defensive breakdown, and you gave up a goal, another long-distance goal to Cincinnati on a defensive breakdown, in my opinion, where the central mids and the center backs, nobody stepped. We saw that last year in the Toronto match in playoffs. That's the goals you've given up. That's it. So even playing risky, you're not giving up a ton of goals. You're not shipping a ton of goals. So it's got to get better, don't get me wrong. But I think that ambition, in my mind, is something that I'm thankful for with this team, as opposed to the way Cincinnati played yesterday, the way we've seen other teams play, very defensive. Even a pressing team. I prefer a team that tries to play in the way that Atlanta is trying to play. It's not working right now. And you get to a point that you have to make tough decisions about, I know we want to play this way. Can we play this way right now? Do we have to play maybe a step down, maybe a little bit easier, maybe a little more stable, maybe a little more structured right now to get the best out of what we have to work with today and try to grow to get back to that ideal of where we want to be? That's the hard part about this, because you don't have any information to go on to prepare a team in this environment and in this kind of scenario where preseason games stop for 4 months, start with individual training, start with group training, start with team training, but no games, no preseason games, no friendlies, and then go into this competitive situation. And then game 2 is at 9 a.m. Like, all of that has an effect, and it's hard. It's harder for an Atlanta, in my opinion, than it is for a Cincinnati, for a Red Bulls, for other teams, for even Columbus, the way they play. And I would say Caleb Porter has dialed back his ambition a little bit in this tournament, and he's finding the right balance. He's doing really, really well with having them be vertical, sometimes counterattacking, but deadly in that. Caleb Porter's a guy who wants a ton of possession, but he's not really there yet in this tournament. They're not gonna play like this for the whole season. I think they are going to be a little more expansive, but it's working right now, so we'll see. Let's jump over to Twitter. What do we have?
Orkard Ahmed is in this morning. He says, I won't mind the loss or losses so much if we didn't look so out of sync doing it. Atlanta United was the first team back training, and it is, in all caps, unacceptable for us to be playing this bad. I know the 3-4-3 can work great if we have Joseph and we're flowing, but Joseph ain't coming through that door. We don't seem to have the best group playing. Who are the best 11 players on this team, regardless of position or formation, without Joseph? And he's got more, so I'll stop there.
That's a lot of stuff, and it's complicated. I don't think it's unacceptable because the training has affected the fitness, which I think has been good. Anybody would have been feeling the humidity yesterday. Even if you were in great shape, you're going to be feeling that yesterday. So I didn't think fitness affected Saturday night at all. I thought the team was sharp at the end. So the sharpness in terms of, and that's where my questions have been about this team. They haven't looked sharp in the final third, and they didn't look sharp in transition play on Saturday night. That comes from games, not training time. So that's a little bit different conversation. I did expect the tactics to look a little bit better, but that sharpness is not there. In terms of 3-4-3 with Joseph, I agree. I think it works. I think it worked early this season. I liked what we saw. Can it work without him? Yeah, in different ways. It absolutely can. I don't think you can create the lineup based off the best 11 players, period, regardless of formation. I don't think it's an issue of not playing the best players. I think it's an issue of how do you replace the best goal scorer in the league. And you've tried a few different things. I think at this point, and maybe some of it has to do with what I said in the last topic about the cohesion and building in the 3-4-3 and simplifying, I think Adam John's the best option up top. Because I think he makes the attack, the final third movement, easy to follow, simple. You don't require as much of that understanding that you're still developing. Adam John's gonna play centrally as a number 9. He's not gonna drift out to the flank. He's not gonna drop in as a false 9. He's gonna be that number 9. He's gonna be that outlet for a long ball. He's gonna go up and fight with the center backs. We've seen good work from him in terms of flick-ons, bringing other people into the play, those types of things you're looking for out of a big number 9. I think he simplifies the attack. And right now, that's what you need. So is he, in terms of just best soccer players and the best 11 players on the team? I don't think so. I think there's more talented technical players. But in terms of effectiveness, I think he would make the attack work better right now because it would simplify it. And I think that's what you're looking for at the moment. So it's a tough one to balance all that, but that's my reaction anyway. What else does 4Card have?
I disagree with Frank DeBoer. The 3-4-3 isn't the best formation right now, and we don't seem to have the best group of players playing at the same time. We have to find at least 1 point against Columbus by any means necessary. I don't expect to move on, and MLS is back.
I don't expect to move on either because of all the things you have to have happen. All you can do is beat Columbus. If other things happen and you get more games because of it, great. And you will have had some luck fall your way. But no, the last part, I agree. I don't expect that either. I don't know what you do differently to deal with Columbus if you're just trying to get a result here. If you want to concede possession, sit back in a 5-4-1 and just defend, you could. I don't know if that gets you the win. I don't know. I don't know if that's the best route either. I think the 3-4-3 can work. I do think that Adam John gives you the best option up top, and I think he makes everything work better. I said it at the beginning. I said it on Southern Fried Soccer. It's hindsight 2020 because I did not think of this during the broadcast yesterday. I didn't think it at the time when the red card happened. I think because of what we saw from Pitti and Barco as the day went on and just how the energy was sapped, probably a safe bet that you knew Barco couldn't go 90 because he didn't even play more than 30 on Saturday. And I think you had to probably have a good understanding that Pitti was going to get gassed because of how much work he put in Saturday night. Even though it's not by the book. The move that Frank made was by the book. That is the move you make in that situation. You have an early red card. You sacrifice your number 9. You've got Pitti and Barco who can win 1v1s. You won a penalty. It was taken away. It would have been a different game if that had happened. But because of the energy levels and the conditions, maybe it would have been a better idea to keep John on for Pitti. I would have probably went because Barco, you would think, maybe was a little fresher in that moment. But you would have had to play differently. To get things out of it, you would have had to play differently, and maybe that would have solved it. That's yesterday. 3-4-3 can work, in my opinion. I think it works best right now with Adam John as the number 9.
Ellen Reynolds says that match was ugly in pretty much every way imaginable. The red cards, the play, the refs, all of it. My 1-year-old was so upset he actually peed all over my Atlanta United shirt during the last 5 minutes of stoppage time. Is 2020 over yet? Hashtag overreaction Friday.
That's not good. My day was rough. Ugh.
And then Ellen's question, and it goes to what you've been talking about. Do you feel Frank should have made a different sub instead of John after Mulroney was sent off? She says, I'm not pointing fingers at Frank, just wondering what would have been done post-red to get a better result. Hindsight's 2020.
Exactly. I did not think that at the time. That's the move that 9 managers out of 10 are going to make. It's the by-the-book move. If Cincinnati had come out to play, which you would expect at that point with a man advantage, I think pulling John, keeping Pitti and Barco in would have been more effective immediately. You did create chances when you went to 10. You created more chances in the first half, playing half of it with 10 men. You were the better team in the first half of it with 10 men. Second half was different as you got tired, and Cincinnati came into the game more. There was no switch flipped, but they came into the game more, I think more than anything, because you got tired. And they recognized that Joe Gial was their man of the match, in my opinion. He was the danger man for them because Castro couldn't body him off of anything, and he obviously took advantage of Mulroney. His combination of size and speed and savviness was too much. Atlanta couldn't handle it. And they started to use him more, and they started to play through him. That was smart by Cincinnati. I think if you had known how Cincinnati was going to approach the match after they had the man advantage, you would have kept Adam John on. Because you could have tried to open the game up by playing direct, creating a game of some chaos, of just some ping-pong back and forth, and Cincinnati opening up because of that, making them have the ball a little bit more, making them try to do something with it. You didn't know that Cincinnati was going to do that. You would have thought they would have opened up, created 1v1 opportunities, and you want Pitti and Barco on that. So it's a by-the-book sub, but the way the game played out, maybe it would have been more useful to have John stay in.
At Not Baby Fark MCG, David's in this morning. He says, we need more off-the-ball runs to create space, and Jeff was the only one I noticed making them, which is concerning. Hashtag Overreaction Friday. We're 2-2 on the season. Our defense still looks pretty good, and our offense just needs more time. Hashtag realism. Probably more apropos for an Overreaction Friday. JJ should be cut from the team.
No. Again, I don't think it was egregious with J.J. Williams in that moment. He was baited by Kendall Waston. It's not like he ran over to somebody and kicked them when nothing happened. That part's the overreaction. The middle part, realistic. It's absolutely realistic. So, I don't know. This tournament has affected Atlanta from a quality standpoint in a big way. Atlanta has not adapted to the different kind of conditions in this. The movement off the ball yesterday, Brooks Lennon was moving a lot off the ball as well. Brooks, I think, is the fittest guy in this team. He was driving forward at the very end after playing 90 on Saturday night, too. I agree on Jeff. He was pushing forward. You would have liked to have seen more. You would have liked to have seen more from Castro when he came on. I thought his movement was better on Saturday night. He did drop into a little bit more of a defensive role as things shifted around, but it just... You're with 10 men, and that's the number one thing out of this, and that's why all of this talk about shape and this and that... A lot of it does get thrown out the window because you played the majority of this match with 10, and you're trying to find a way to score with 10. You're trying to find a way to defend with 10. None of it is traditional. You're mixing and matching and trying to find something. You can't leave that out of the conversation. So, and in this tournament, you've given up one goal, 11v11. You gave up a goal with 10. That's to be expected. It stinks. And it's hard to make a whole lot of sense of because you haven't played 180 minutes with 11v11. You played most of that second match without it. It does have an effect on the way it plays out.
Turner Kirby, his hashtag Overreaction Friday goes to the fans, or parenthesis, fans in quotation marks, of this team. Judging by a lot of the takes I've seen over the last 24 hours, maybe FDB was right. We are spoiled.
No, it's passion. It's passion, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think being blinded by it from some of the realistic situations with this, you don't want to be there. But it's passion. I'm a little surprised at how negative it gets after a result, especially after a result like this one, where when Merritt Paulson's the voice of reason, it's a weird day. It's a very weird day. If you follow the game for an extended period of time, you kind of know what's going to happen when there's a first half red card. Anything you get, if you get a draw out of that, it's a bonus. If you get a win out of that, it's a borderline miracle. It's the reality. And I know, and I think it's come up. If not, I'm a little surprised it hasn't. We talked about this last year when the Red Bulls had a red card against Atlanta. That's different in that the Red Bulls are going to base everything they do around how they defend and what they do coming out of defending with their transition. Atlanta bases everything they do around the ball and having possession and creating opportunities that way. It's easier to adjust if you are a defend-first team. And the Red Bulls are not a defensive, boring team, but understand their tactics are based around defending.
Yes.
When your tactics are based around defending, it's easier to adjust to losing a man. If anything, it just gets you to be more defensive. If you are an attacking team and a possession team, losing a man in that early in the match is catastrophic. It just is. So that's the number one thing. And you knew that getting a result, the chances of that dramatically decreased when you had that red card to Mulroney. It's a fact. So the negativity after the result with that happening doesn't click. It's not the same conversation as losing 1-0 to Cincinnati 11-11. It's not. It's a very different conversation losing the way it went down yesterday. That's not getting into the penalty. That's not getting into the Duplan should have been a red. That's not getting into that stuff. That's just saying first half red card, your chances of getting a result are very, very small. And I think they are smaller because of the conditions you were playing in with the Heat. That made it even more difficult. That upped the degree of difficulty.
John Nason's in this morning. This is the first of a couple from John. He says he really thinks that Frank should have left John on after the red, keep Franco at left back, playing some sort of 4-4-1, allowing Pitti to roam behind him.
Hold that thought real quick. Franco was on the right side. He did move things around a little bit at times. This is another one that after the fact, I would have preferred to see, even when Castillo came on, and he's a natural left-sided player. And he got forward really well from the left side, and that's what you wanted. He had one of the best chances in the match. But the 1v1 matchup with João, Castillo's not winning that. Franco maybe is, because he's more physical. He can run with João. Maybe that would have been a better defensive setup. You would have sacrificed a little bit with Castillo on the other side, on the right side, but I think you might have handled and kept João in check more. Ultimately, João didn't make you lose. It was a moment from Amaya, but that's another one looking back at it that maybe that would have helped a little bit. I'm with you looking back. John staying on maybe would have been better because it would have been fresher. You could have left Barco or Pitti on. But I think Frank expected Cincinnati to come out and play at that point. I would have. I think everybody did. And they didn't. So it negated the 1v1 abilities of Pitti and Barco because they didn't really have them because Cincinnati kept numbers back. It was more 1v2s.
And John says the way FCC were playing, there was really no need for the extra center back, and we already knew that the false nine was an issue creatively.
But that's the thing here is we didn't think Cincinnati would play that way after getting the man advantage. You thought that would change. And Frank banked on that. Maybe you could have waited a little bit longer to make that. When did it happen? It happened in the hydration break. That was a few minutes after the Mulroney red card?
Yes.
And you brought on Castillo because we saw Castillo start warming up immediately. I remember talking about it on the call. Maybe you could have rolled the dice and got to halftime with what you had. And what you would have had to have done would have been to go to 4. You could have moved Lennon or Escobar over to the left. I think temporarily while you were waiting for that hydration break, it was Escobar went over to the left. You could have kept with that. Played that 4 with Escobar in the left, Meza, Robinson in the middle, Lennon on the right. Midfield would have been the same with Remedi and Lorenowitz as the holding. What would you have wanted to do? You could have done like a 4-4-1, basically a box midfield. Think about how North Carolina Courage and Red Bulls do that 4-2-2-2. You would have done a 4-2-2-1. John would have been the 1. Pitti and Barco would have sat behind him like they were intending to do anyway. And then Remedi and Lorenowitz would have sat there. You would have been asking Escobar and Lennon to defend their flanks in space solo with getting some rotational help. But that could have been a way to solve it. So, again, Cincinnati didn't come out and do what you would expect them to do. They surprised all of us by continuing to sit back even with the man advantage.
Caleb Cook is in this morning, and it goes to what you've been addressing in the first hour and 45 minutes of the program. He says, Jason, my good sir, will you please explain to people that even with
when
Joseph...
I get called my good sir, I'm in trouble.
He says, will you please explain to people that even with Joseph out, we still have one of the most talented rosters in MLS, and please give your diagnosis for the trash we've seen on the field. Your opinion should be one of the most regarded in #Atlanta fandom.
Oh, man, now that I feel like you're setting me up, Caleb. I think I've addressed most of it. I think playing the way that I wouldn't call it trash. I think that's an overreaction, in my opinion. I think if you were giving up more than a goal a game, it'd be trash. Yeah. Offensively, it's been trash. And talked about it after Red Bulls. You created chances, but you didn't finish them. You create 10 chances, you should have a goal. No question. This one, you can't even really look at those numbers because you played with 10 men for 70-plus minutes, so including stoppage time. So you're not going to create as many chances. That's a fact. You still created chances. You earned a penalty that was taken away from you. There's nothing you can do about that. You had a couple of big shots that forced big saves from Teton. The free kick from Pitti, the shot from Castillo. You still created even with 10. You didn't finish. Finishing is, if you're looking for something that is leading to trash, finishing is it. That's the number one thing. Transition play to a lesser extent, mainly because you give up one goal off true transition. The one against Cincinnati, you have to add tired legs into the equation, but lack of the mental sharpness of playing matches has shown up at times. Transition is where that's going to show up because it's all about reacting quickly, making decisions quickly. And when you're not playing those games and having those things pop up consistently, it takes you a little bit longer in this system to do that. And it showed at a couple of moments. So for what's making it look like trash, it's the lack of finishing. It is the transition moments that are taking too long to diagnose. That's it. It's not this giant, massive problem, in my opinion. It's those things. You get a goal like you should have had on Saturday. You get a penalty like you should have had here. You might be looking at 4 points. You're not. You're looking at 0 right now.
And Jason Nix is also in on Twitter, as he has been on Twitch this
Bouncing
morning,
back and forth, confusing us.
So here's Jason, the Twitter version of Jason. And they're out of order. His tweets are out of order because he put an extra character in the @ on the first one. So he apologized for that up top. Okay. I know it's only 2 games, but it feels like this team has taken a giant step back from where they were at the end of last year. I know you can't just replace Joseph, but the rest of the team has to step up and frankly hasn't. And in all caps, on an overreaction Friday, the front office has to take some responsibility for the level of talent that's on the field. I feel like every replacement, in quotation marks, from last year has been a downgrade, not an upgrade. Now I'm really on the ledge. And while we've taken a step back, I feel like so many teams have taken a big step forward and we're left behind. We've beaten the 2 worst teams in the league as our only wins. Those weren't easy. I know it's overreaction Friday, but I'm genuinely worried.
You cannot leave the fact that Joseph Martinez has missed. He hasn't finished an MLS game this year. He was injured in Nashville. Mm-hmm. We saw the Motagua series with the way this team was being built. You didn't have Josetu at that point. You didn't have Castro in the group at that point. I disagree that every addition has been a step back. I think Fernando Meza is a very good center back in this league. I have no problem with him. I have no problem with Brooks Lennon. Brooks Lennon is a better defender than Julian Gressel in that role, and his crossing needs to improve. That is a fact. I'm a little surprised we've seen as many crosses so far. That's not something I think the way this team wants to play. Lennon had some poor crosses yesterday. but he's a better defender. He gives you a different option to get in behind that you didn't have with Gressel. He's not outrunning anybody. The way this team was intended to play this season is not what we've seen at the end of any MLS match. So it's a little hard to jump to that conclusion, in my opinion. I think this team at full health is as good as any team in the league. I do think the other teams have upgraded, for sure. Columbus has upgraded, no question about it. NYC was already good. They didn't lose anybody. The Red Bulls did not upgrade. Miami put them in a different conversation because they're brand new. Toronto, they might have upgraded with Pablo Piatti. It's a little early to say that yet, but I like what I've seen from him. You have the development of Ayo Akinola, especially last night, who had a great night. But Josie Altidore was who you expected to be in that role. He's not going to play as much. If you get Akinola developing in, then it's a little different than upgrading because you've developed him. I think at full strength this team is right there with everybody else, but they're not, and it's showing. And about stepping up, about somebody else stepping up, yeah. But I do think having that 4-month break has absolutely affected that process. I hoped that getting back to training early would have helped answer the questions about the way to solve it. But that lack of games was a bigger factor than I would have expected. I expected things to look sharper, but that match rhythm is not there. It hasn't been there. I think they were developing it yesterday, and this was something I talked about a lot in the pregame, and it played out the way I expected it to. We've seen these early games where it feels like teams are struggling to get going early on in that 9 a.m. kick. I thought Atlanta would come in and be very focused on getting everybody touches early. And with the way you knew that the halves were going to be broken up with 2 hydration breaks, it almost gives you segments to plan for. So that first 15, you had 100 passes. Everybody touched the ball. I thought the tempo was ramping up before the red card. The red card changed everything. Throw everything out at that point. So the argument, and I went back and forth with Doug about this yesterday, the argument about you didn't create any chances in the first 20 minutes before you had the red card. You were playing 90, and you only got 26 as part of that plan.
Yeah.
That's like cutting the last 2 acts out of a 3-act play. Of course it's not going to be as good because you're building to it. You're not intending it to end at the end of Act 1. You're intending Act 1 to make Act 2 better and Act 3 better. In this case, you're building to make the game better as you get everybody comfortable and you start to open up more, and you see that Cincinnati's going to sit back and give you the ball. You didn't get to play that out. So you have to Frank said it, and it was an interesting term, but it's dead on. He said you have to put the match overboard at that point with the red card. You do.
Yeah, you do.
You have to throw it out because you can't say, well, you didn't create chances early. They were intending to build and grow into the game. That's thrown out by the red card. It's very bad from Jake Mulroney. Don't get me wrong here. That red card, that affected everything. In a World Cup, in any kind of tournament format like this, you have a first half red card, you have 3 games, you're basically throwing a game out because of the first half red card. You're throwing it overboard. You're throwing it in the trash. You're screwed in that moment. You can't have that happen. It did. It killed the game plan. It killed everything for that game. You still nearly got out of it with a result. You didn't. But all that started with the red card. So that's I'm trying not to say the same things over and over again. I'm trying to expand, but the red card changed everything yesterday.
It did. Bartimus Prime on an overreaction Friday. Columbus scored 2 against Red Bulls Press. DC scored twice, a man down against Toronto in a 9 a.m. match. All I've heard from our manager is excuses.
The Press had nothing to do with the Red Bulls game. Atlanta handled the Press fine. Go look at the numbers. Red Bulls had 1 transition moment. That's it. The problem when somebody's asked what went wrong, and they tell you why they think something went wrong, it's not an excuse. It's the way they see it. We've really turned this now to a point that if you try to explain the way a game played out, it's an excuse. It's not. The red card's not an excuse. It's a fact. It changes the game. I've given you the facts as I see them on the penalty that should have been a penalty. I've given you the facts as I see them on what should have been a red card for them. The red card absolutely changed everything. It's going to affect a team in a 9 a.m. game more than a 10:30 p.m. game. The conditions are more conducive to a team with a man advantage playing when it feels like it's 100 degrees, when the humidity is that high. That was the worst of the 9 a.m. games, which you can't plan for, but it happened. It was the most oppressive heat that you've had in one of the early games. Bad timing for a red card in the first half. It's a fact. The Red Bulls press didn't hurt Atlanta. Atlanta created chances. They didn't finish. They didn't not finish because of the press. That's not the issue. They didn't finish because they weren't good enough in the final third. That's a fact. They needed to convert their chances. They didn't. I haven't heard any excuses about that game. You had the chances. You didn't finish them. That's a fact. It's not an excuse. You didn't finish. Castro didn't take advantage of his opportunities. He had them. Period. Just how it is. But yesterday, you can't even look at it the same way because of the red card. That's a fact, too. It's not an excuse. It's a fact.
Katie Weaver, how about them Crew?
Oh, sorry to Katie. The last part about DC scored 2 goals, a man down.
Yeah.
DC plays differently, too. And it was DC's first game, not their second. Those things factor into it as well. You had a spectacular individual effort, which you'd like to see from one of Atlanta's players. You didn't. Federico Higuain gives you something special. You had to go off a set piece.
Mm-hmm.
First game versus second game, not as hot versus hotter. Those things add up to it as well. Sorry, Katie. Crew, very good. Yes. I don't know what else to say. Columbus has been the best team in the tournament so far.
Yeah. Shiva, I'm not going to overreact because I don't think we can judge much from the game yesterday, but I am overall concerned about our lack of goal scoring. Let's compare us to the Crew. They've had a roster change, a coaching change, just like we have. Where do you see the difference between their success and our lack of success? Is it truly not having Joseph?
Yeah. They have Jossie Zardes, and Atlanta doesn't. Jossie Zardes is their number 9. He's one of the best goal scorers in the league. Cut below Joseph, but when he's got the opportunities that he is being fed with, he's converting them. Atlanta doesn't have that. It's not trying to oversimplify, but yeah, right now, Jossie Zardes is better than any number 9 that Atlanta has. That's a fact. Atlanta's tried to find other ways to solve that issue. It hasn't worked yet. Created the chances to do it on Saturday, didn't finish them. Red card changes everything, but yeah, Jossie Zardes is better than any option that Atlanta has up top at the moment. And Jossie Zardes is not the same player, not the same position as Pitti or Barco. It's not a comparison between them. It's between a number 9 option. You could even say that Pitti Martinez as a number 9 is not as, like, if you put him into Columbus's system as a number 9, Columbus probably wouldn't be as effective, and they'd play differently because Pitti would give them different things. If you ask him to do what Zardes does, probably not going to be as good. If you ask Zardes to do what Pitti does, not going to be as good. But as a number 9, and that's what Atlanta needs to replace Joseph at their best, Zardes is a better option than anything Atlanta has. And it's showing.
Tafka's in this morning. Is Ayo Akinola eligible for Canada? If so, where does he stand in choosing a nation to represent?
He is. He has played for U.S. youth national teams, but he hasn't played for the senior team. I saw all of the cap him now, start him now. He's the best forward the U.S. has. He's played like 4 starts in MLS, 5 starts in MLS. That part, okay, slow down. But when you're talking about getting him cap-tied and you're getting him to declare for the U.S., yes, you have to get that done. I believe he could also represent Nigeria as well. They're all going to be calling today. They're definitely going to be calling. We've seen Akinola with the U.S. Youth National Teams. We've seen him with TFC too. It's felt like it hasn't all fit for him until that match, and he looked really, really good. Can he continue to do it? I don't know. He's a young forward. He hasn't played like that up to this point. But, yeah, if you want to make sure he doesn't play for Canada and continue to develop, if you want to make sure he doesn't choose Nigeria instead, you need to get him cap-tied, but you got to have a game to get him cap-tied, and we don't know when that's going to be anytime soon.
Michael Head and Lieutenant Dave. Michael Head, no longer elite. That is sad. Please bring the fun back. Lieutenant Dave, it's really down to this. Without Joseph, this team is anemic. We can't score. We don't put fear in opponents until this is solved. As sad as it is, Atlanta United is a mediocre team.
No, I'm going to disagree with that last part, because if you don't put fear into opponents, why does Cincinnati play the way they did? Why does Red Bulls sit back more? That's incorrect. Both managers, too, said it after the match. Both of them talked about the way they played, the way they intended to play, the way they came into the game was based off that respect for Atlanta. So, no, it's not that they don't put fear into opponents, because opponents are playing them like they're scared. So, it's the same conundrum that I've seen with people saying that the team didn't play with passion yesterday. I completely and utterly disagree. And then people saying that players are playing undisciplined and reckless and things like that. And it's like, well, it can't be both. It's one or the other. Either you're not playing hard or you're playing too hard. You know, it's. I think you are scaring opponents. They're very scared of Pity Martinez and Ezequiel Barco, and they're playing accordingly. They're not elite right now. That can change. Power rankings evolve, as you see. But right now, no, they're not elite. They're not getting the goals to be elite. Those are facts. But teams are still playing them like they respect Atlanta United. And they should. Because if they don't, then, yeah, there's more space for Pity Martinez to go 1v1. There's more space for Barco when he's healthy to go 1v1 and beat people and change the game. Teams aren't giving them those opportunities enough because they're afraid of it. So that hasn't changed. But Atlanta's not elite right now because you're missing the player that makes you a contender to win any trophy they put in front of you. Joseph Martinez is that good. He's that effective. He's that deadly for this team. You don't have him. You're not finding goals elsewhere. You're not elite right now. That's where you're at.
Michael Head understands my frustration with the ref. He says, so what? We should have won against the supposed worst team in MLS. The team performance was unacceptable. Everything else is just excuses.
No, it's not. No. I'm going to push back. And, Michael, I have a ton of respect for you. But, no, it's not that simple. A red card in the first half is not an excuse. It's not. It's a fact. That's not the ref being bad either. But to say that you're disappointed with the performance, but you're going to gloss over a first half red card, you can't do that because your performance happens because you're playing with 10 in those conditions, which made it even harder than it normally would. That's not an excuse. That's a fact. You can blame the loss on Mulroney because of that if you want to, but you can't blame the performance because you can't perform at the same level with 10v11, period, let alone in the conditions that you were playing in. You cannot perform at as high of a level with 10 men as you would with 11. It is impossible. That's why you don't see teams win regularly 10v11. Can it happen? Yes. It's very rare. We've seen it happen to Atlanta. The Red Bulls did it. As I said earlier, it's easier for a defensive team to deal with that because you get more defensive. Harder for an attacking team to deal with it because you lose one of your attackers. You don't have a man advantage anywhere on the field. You can't call everything an excuse when it's a loss. There are things that explain losses. A first half red card, it's textbook. You're going to lose that. It's the Premier League results that in studies that I've read, 5% chance of winning with a red card anytime in the match, let alone in the 26th minute. 5% chance. And that's not factoring in quality of teams or anything like that. Maybe if you want to argue it could be a higher chance because Atlanta is a better team than Cincinnati, okay. Not a whole lot higher. 10, 15%. It is what it is. You have that red card, you're screwed. You're screwed. You want to blame Mulroney for putting himself in that position, that's fine. He did. But you can't complain about the performance when you play shorthanded for that long of a period of time in that match. And the performance was not the issue against the Red Bulls. You were the better team. You didn't convert your chances, and you gave up one goal. You want to complain about the Daniel Royer chance that he had? You should. That was too good of a chance to concede. That's about it. There was one other big save that Brad made. You're giving up 3 chances a game. You're playing pretty well. You had more than that. You didn't convert. But performance is taking everything into totality. Results is boiling it down to you didn't convert your chances. They did. You had more chances. They had less. Doesn't matter. New York beat you because of the way it played out. This one, you have a red card in the first half. Your chances to get a result go very, very small at that point. And you cannot perform the same way, and you can't expect them to. That's unrealistic. That's my pushback on it. I hope that makes sense because I'm trying to be very specific here about that. It's not about. I hope it makes sense to Michael because it's not about making excuses, but it's facts. When you have a red card in the first half, your chances of winning and getting a result are pretty much gone. Your chance of performing at the same level, it's impossible. It's completely and utterly impossible.
Then John Nason, to me, he says, not that any of my opening points don't have some level of validity. You control your own performance, and unfortunately, it wasn't a good one for Atlanta United yesterday. That's his 2 cents.
Again, yesterday, performance, you're judging it on 26 minutes of a 90-minute match. It changed. After that, you can't judge performance. I really don't think you can because you're playing shorthanded. You have to judge it differently if you want to judge it, but you're not judging it by the same, they play with 11 this game, they play with 10 this game. You can't judge that the same. You can't. Let me go back to Twitch real quick because it's piling up.
Go for it.
Let's see. I know some of you guys have said some things that we've addressed or talked through, so I am going to skip around a little bit. Please don't be insulted or throw things at me or come cut my internet. Please don't do that. That'd be mean. Badgermon said, would it be possible to have some of our guys play for Atlanta United 2 to keep sharp when we are eliminated? Yeah, you'd be back to being able to have guys play for the 2s at that point because your team would come back into market. You'd be out of the bubble. So, yeah, you could. I think for some of the younger guys, it would make a lot of sense. Maybe you give George Bello a game there, even though I think he is advanced past the 2s as a whole. You keep him sharp. George Campbell, Lawrence Wyke, you want to get guys sharpness, yeah, you could use them for Atlanta United too in those moments, absolutely. Let's see. Wal Chara said, that makes sense, but why were Atlanta favorites then coming into the tournament? Like I said, I've read a lot of stuff. I don't know what to believe. That's where the reaction to say that they're garbage now, it's an overreaction. Everybody had them as a favorite coming in. I did too. I thought they'd be better. They're not. The match sharpness has been a bigger issue than I thought it would be. I was wrong. A lot of people were wrong. I mean, most people nationally had them ranked higher, than maybe some of the local people did. Had them ranked as a contender in this tournament. I did too. They haven't been able to play like it. They haven't played like it. They haven't won the individual moments. And you can look at as simple as the transition against Red Bulls. Gazan won the moment against Royer with the big save. Castro did not win the moments that he had in the 18. Mulroney did not win the moments 1v1 that led to a red card. I think Barco won the moment to get a penalty. VAR disagreed. Offside on the call. And you didn't win the moment to stop Frankie Amaya from scoring from 22-plus yards out, which is not a high percentage shot. It's not you're getting beat 4-0. It's not you're getting beat the way NYC is. You're getting beat by moments. And that sharpness, I think, is where those moments, that lack of sharpness, those moments change because of it. It's not big things, it's little things. I'll take that. But I think they were favorites because they're a talented roster. They're just not winning those individual moments right now, and that's why it's showing. So, let's see. Badgermon talks about the boring soccer that sometimes DeBoer gets accused of. Cincinnati was horrendously boring with a man advantage. Yeah. We've seen other teams that are far more boring. I think a lot of that is just continuing to carry over from people don't like Frank as much as they like Tata Martino. That's just where the fan base is. I don't think it's necessarily fair, but they're very different personalities, and it's there. And whenever something goes wrong, when it went wrong before, you had criticism of Tata Martino in the 2 years that he was here. Don't get it twisted. People criticized him. People nationally and internationally criticized him. The long-running thing on Tata was he couldn't win the big game. That was it. He couldn't win the big game because he lost in penalties twice with Argentina. And he didn't win a trophy with Barcelona, even though they had a great season. They didn't win a trophy. Can't win the big game. Tata Martino can't get it done. He did. But that was what would pop up. It popped up in, let's see, he had 5 games after it, but it popped up at the very end of the regular season in 2018 when they lost in Toronto. There was a lot of criticism of Tata Martino in that one. There was a lot of criticism a month before that when they lost at Red Bull Arena. So those things happened. But you had a trophy at the end of it, so maybe they're washed away a little bit. And Frank's a different personality. I think some of the treatment of Frank's been really unfair. I think, if anything, he's taken more chances getting players forward than Tata did. Tata didn't send everybody forward. Tata looked for those transition moments. And he had a player who's one of the best this league's ever seen in transition in Miguel Almiron. And that was how the team was built. Frank is trying to control games more, but he's also being aggressive. And he's getting tons of numbers forward. Look how high Escobar and Lennon and Bello and Meza played against Red Bulls. He didn't play that conservatively. There was nothing boring about it. It didn't end up getting the result, but it's not boring, and it's not conservative. About Bello, Ropes had asked about it, and Alex Pacine said it, that he was being saved for the Columbus game. We were told it was a coach's decision. Frank expanded on it after the match, that they wanted him fresh for Columbus. The only thing about Bello that comes up is you could have used him as a sub after Mulroney was substituted. It doesn't affect the fact that you're playing with 10. You could have started him instead of Mulroney, but I expected Mulroney to start. He was good off the bench against Red Bulls, and he's been good this season. So I didn't have a problem with it going into it. It's easy to look back at it now and say Bello should have started. I thought there would be some rotation in those spots. And Frank laid out his case for it before the game, before any red cards, about minutes and about conditions and about fitness. And the wing backs were a position that I thought there'd be rotation. There was in this case, and Mulroney made 2 bad decisions that got you a red card and cost you the game completely. Let's see, what else we got? Chacho still growling about the debacle yesterday. I hope not. That's not good. Don't growl. Soccer for good OG. It did mess up the rest of her day soccering, only mildly interested in the evening games. I was too tired for the evening games.
Yep, I watched them.
I will try to keep pronouncing your last name correctly, Alex Pacine. I will try. The puppy yawns and does a big stretch when that happens. So that's good. Nice. Greenville soccer guy Chris Ashley with some investigative journalism. Uh-oh. Some reverse IP address searches show the same IP address for CharlotteMLS2021.com, which is where the site is parked now. That also owns CharlotteFootballClub.com. Chris Ashley says it's safe to assume that is the name that will be unveiled next Wednesday. Meh. That's my reaction to that.
Name them the Charlotte Flares. Get it over with. That'd be
No,
awesome.
you're going to have to pay a lot of money. Just be the Monarchs. Just be the Monarchs. It's simple and safe. It's easy. Byrne said, I heard that Tata asked about trading for Parkey in his initial talks for the front office. I don't remember where I read it. Might have been an interview with Boca Negra. Might be wrong. He might have. I don't remember that conversation. I'm sure they talked about it, but I would say that maybe the impetus for that would have come from the other way, and Tata agreed, as opposed to Tata saying, go get him for me. I might be wrong in that. I wasn't in the room, so I couldn't tell you. But I think that one's going to come from more of the team side than the Tata side, but maybe not. Ricky Ricardo said, did y'all talk about the Falcon season ticket holder email? I think Atlanta United will have to do something similar. Do you know what that is, John, off the top of your head?
Off the top of my head, they're going to have limited seating. They're going to ask their season ticket holders to choose if they want to show up for certain games. Show up, let us know, and then go from there, figuring out. And you can also roll it over to 2021 if you don't want to show up for 2020.
Okay, I got it. Credit for any funds paid towards 2020 season tickets will remain on the account to either purchase tickets for select 2020 home games, pay off PSL installments, which is separate and it doesn't fit at the Atlanta United situation, can be rolled over to cover costs to purchase 21. The NFL has sent guidelines regarding stadium configuration and reduced capacity. That's where this is all coming from. I agree, Ricky, that I think whatever the Falcons do, Atlanta United would do the same thing. I don't think MLS's policies would be more restrictive than the NFL, so I don't think that would change it. And I don't think the organization would do one thing for one team and not the same for the other, because typically they've always done the same. Unless there's some difference in cost elements or things that factor in, but I can't see that being the case. So, yeah, I think everything that the Falcons would have to do, Atlanta United would have to do in regard to season tickets.
And at the same time, the kickoff classic that is in high school football here in the state of Georgia uses Mercedes-Benz for their third day of operation. This week, they abandoned Mercedes-Benz and will be playing at a local high school because, according to the executive director of the event, they were going to cap attendance at 6,000, and I imagine that's for the lower bowl, so whatever that percentage is, probably 15, 20%. And they were going to ask them to sanitize, have everybody leave, sanitize the stadium and that lower bowl, then let folks back in. And so it turned out to be cost prohibitive. So 20% capacity lower bowl is what that sounded like to me. So that's right. might be a guidepost for events when it comes to the lower bowl, 20%-ish kind of a thing, just to keep it
potentially. The cost element would be different in this case because of just how rentals and control of the venue would work. And you're doing multiple events in that day, so the leaving and coming back, that would factor in too. So a little bit different with that, but yes. But I agree. I think the way the policies would work would be pretty similar. I'd be surprised if they're not.
Yep.
Let's see here. What else do we have on Twitch as we try to catch up? A lot of conversation about that stuff. Walchara says, I got into this team because of the tournament. Do you think there's going to be an uptick of new fans after these performances, or is there going to be drop-off? I really wanted the team to be exciting, but ... I don't think there's going to be an uptick. I think... Actually, no, I might take that back. I think there's going to be people who are paying attention to this tournament because there's nothing else going on yet. The results haven't helped in the regard of converting new fans. But you see it sometimes, and people talk about it with teams that they like. Sometimes they get hooked on a team, and it's the losing that keeps them hooked in some way. It does happen. So, I don't know. Just the fact that they were first might help people connected to it. I've noticed some new faces, like when we talk about the game on 92.9 and people tweet at us that they're listening. I've noticed some new folks. Maybe it's just new people interacting, but I think there's some new listeners because they've been hungry for something to represent Atlanta on a field in any sport. Hopefully those folks stick. I know we had some new listeners for the first time yesterday, and maybe it was the kickoff time that had a fact with it, and hopefully us losing our minds was entertaining because we were losing our minds. Yeah. Badgermon says even Twelman was rendered speechless by Cincinnati not going for it after the red. I was.
It was the Orange Cassidy of soccer.
Yeah, it was. Orange Cassidy would have been impressed. Shooter's back. Shooter's was very happy because we had Shooter on the run-up, and Shooter went for the big underdog. Shooter said, your boys made Shooter's wallet fat. Yeah. Good job, Shooter. Shooter says, taking the over for the rest of this tourney. Maybe I'll buy a second house in Atlanta when my winnings come in. Shooter, you're still my favorite, man. He's going to buy one of them big houses.
On the big side of town.
Yep. Hey, I got the over right on the San Jose game. I almost got the score. Y'all laughed at my prediction of 5 for San Jose. I wasn't far off.
Yeah, because it was crazy in that last 20 and got to 7, and I was like, yep. And yeah, so that was good stuff. But yeah, 5. The MLS After Dark, MLS's Back After Dark was crazy.
That thing was bonkers. Adam and Shooter went back and forth on the schedule tonight because you got 2 games at the same time. It wasn't originally scheduled that way. DC's game got bumped because of the Toronto DC game getting bumped a day, Sunday to Monday. So the DC got pushed back a day, and they didn't put it at 9 a.m. this morning, which probably good for everybody, or they didn't move the Kansas City-Colorado game up to 9 o'clock, which I think is good. It will affect the TV markets a little bit, but I don't know what else they could have done with that Toronto-DC game getting pushed back a day. This is kind of all you could do. Let's see. Are we going to get another Gustavo Bo bomb tonight?
Yes.
Man, against DC, you think so?
Yeah. Plus 104.
I think New England's a better team than DC. I think they have a much better chance of winning that. I would take that plus 104 for sure. I think their goals could come from a lot of places, though. Bo's amazing. I don't know if he's all of the attack. His first goal was nasty. I agree with Shooter on that one. But I don't know if it's necessarily Bo's going to get the bomb, but I think New England gets the win. I do. Atlanta Phoenix doesn't like Charlotte FC. I agree. I don't either. I'd even have all Carolina. Atlanta Phoenix says that sounds like an insurance company. A little bit. I'd rather have that than Charlotte FC. It is boring.
Carolina Monarchs.
Monarchs is the safe choice. You can't go wrong with that one. Carolina Gliders, if the branding is good, I could dig it. All Carolina, I need some amazing branding for it to work. It's still better than Charlotte FC. Charlotte FC is, man. Yeah. I expected more.
I want the NWSL team to be the Queen City Monarchs.
You wanted what?
When Tepper brings in the NWSL into Charlotte, the Queen City Monarchs.
I'm gonna go on the traditional sports side of it. It needs to be Charlotte or Carolina. Don't call it Queen City, whatever. I don't think the general sports population is going to respond to that. How are teams named in this country? It's the city or the region in some cases.
Yeah, and you're trying to do regional branding. Yeah, I see your point.
It's just calling it Queen City Monarchs. I think people are going to say, what's that? Or it's going to sound like a minor league team. I think you need to be Charlotte or Carolina something. And Charlotte FC, it does sound like a soccer team. That is true. I think you could still get that feel with something else. I don't like it. Shooter says we like mascots. I'm okay. Like Atlanta United works. They've made it work. Minnesota United, Loons isn't the official name, but that's what we call it. That is the mascot. You have something to go with there. You can make it work, but Charlotte FC is just bland. It's not even a United. It's not even a city. It's just FC.
Yeah.
Be SC at least, but don't do that either. Just come up with something else. You can do better.
Yes.
Charlotte Monarchs or Carolina Monarchs. Do it.
Carolina Monarchs. There,
Easy.
settled, done.
Anything else on Twitter?
Yes.
Okay.
Daniel Price, kind of hard to overreact. It was just unfortunate. A terrible showing in terrible conditions. It's a loss that more than likely disqualifies us from the tournament. Just have to focus on the regular season now and pick up 3 points against Columbus.
The overreaction is because of the effect on the tournament, I think, in a lot of cases. Although, there's other narratives that come into overreactions or reactions in general. But if this was just 2 regular season games, I think it'd be a little different. You're probably not getting into the knockout round in the tournament now. It's probably not going to happen. That's not what this team intended at all, but that's the reality. It is hard to overreact and take things out of context because of all of those things that some say are excuses. I don't. I think they're facts. And you were the better team against Red Bulls, but you did not win. Put that to the side. You have a red card in the first half. You're probably not going to win. You're probably not even going to get a draw because it's very difficult to do that playing with 10v11. It was more difficult because of the conditions. The pushback on even mentioning the conditions from some, you have to combine it with the red card.
Yeah.
If it was 11v11 and you just said, oh, it's really hard for us to play, that's a little bit harder to swallow, although it's going to affect a team that is being proactive more than a team that's being reactive. That's real. But playing 10v11 in those conditions, it ups the difficulty level. It just does.
Joe Bost is in this morning. I will always be an Atlanta United fan, but given the results of the tournament, we can't be considered an elite team now.
We covered that, John. Skip, we've covered a lot of stuff. We don't need every tweet because we've tried to combine a lot of topics because we're going to be here till 3 p.m. New takes. Let's hit those, please. Sorry, Joe. I'm not trying to stop you, Joe, but I saw your tweet and it coincided with a bunch of Twitch, and I know it's been a thing there, so I tried to lump everything together.
What about Bart saying, was he wrong that we seem to attack better with a 4-back system than 3?
No, actually, I disagree because I think you're able to get people forward better in the 3 because your wing backs are more aggressive and getting high, and even as we've seen in these games, Escobar and Meza, it's not taking their ability away to get forward and help. So I don't think it changes the attack. I think it changes the transition to defense when the ball turns over, and it's harder because it's more complicated. It's not simple. It's not as simplistic in the way you transition. You're not just running straight back. So that's where I think it's harder. But in the attack, I think you get more numbers forward this way. I liked what we saw from the 3-4-2-1, 3-4-3 early this season when it was in sync. I liked having 2 10s. It does put a lot of stress on your central midfielders because they can get isolated at times. You have to avoid that. You avoid that either by one of your 10s dropping to help when they need to. I think Barco is a player that does that naturally. Or one of your wingbacks tucking in on the opposite side. So if the ball's on the left, Lennon tucking in to help. In yesterday's case, Remedi and Larinowitz. You have to get one more player there to help. Either Barco or Pitti dropping to help defend in those moments, or your opposite side wing back tucking in to help. And if the team you're playing has that big switch to try to take advantage of that, then the wing backs switch. The one who tucked in to help has to get back outside. The other one has to come in to help the central midfield. That's where I have my biggest concern about the 3-4-3 is getting your 2 holding midfielders isolated. You don't want to do that.
Michael Head back in. Joseph is not going to be here this season. Everybody else is healthy. The coaching staff has to accommodate to number 7's absence. PT and Barco have to have special moments to win games. They are our remaining DPs. They literally have to be special. So far, they have not.
No, but they also sat for 4 months and didn't play. And that's part of it. They haven't been back up to full match sharpness. Pitti was really good on Saturday night. There's really little to criticize him on Saturday night. He was not as effective yesterday. Most of it was played with 10 men. Ezequiel Barco was good on Saturday night in 30 minutes. I think he was better yesterday morning, but he's also not fully fit. I think that showed. And That's where you're at. So, yeah, I agree. Those two guys are going to be the ones that are going to bridge that gap without Joseph in the long run. But you also have to take the way this tournament's come about and the way things are right now into that conversation. They are going to be the ones that you're asking to do more. You're not asking Adam John to score as many goals as Joseph Martinez. What you're asking, if Adam John is the number 9 in this scenario, you're asking him to score goals. And you're asking for the difference to be made up by a Pitti, a Barco, and others scoring more goals as well.
Ricky Ricardo, I know there will be another adjustment period for these players once the tournament is over, but what will Lopez and Dom give us that we aren't seeing now?
Dom gives you, one, I want to see where he plays. If he's going to play as a wing back, he gives you more speed. You do have some questions defensively, but he's a player who's been known to work hard on the defensive end. You have, for some, the questions about Lennon with crossing. You're going to have the same with Dom. It's not the high point of his game. He talks about it. He laughs about it. I wonder if he might play centrally, and you might use him as a way to get in behind more, which you don't have right now. Dom is considerably faster than Pitti or Barco or John or Rossetto or Castro. Any of those options. You can get him in behind the opponent's back line more than you have anybody else on the roster to do that. So he gives you that. I want to see where he plays. Lopez, he's got 16 pro games. I think the expectation of Lopez coming in here and fixing everything is too high. I think he is maybe from a stylistic choice, he's the most like Joseph out of what options you'd have, and maybe that fits. More than anything, you need to get them incorporated into the team on the training pitch. I don't know what you're going to be able to do in terms of games. It'd be great to get some friendlies, not just against Atlanta United too, but some friendlies against other opponents to figure some of these things out. But Lopez is the most like for Joseph. He's not Joseph. He's got 16 games. He's a teenager. Dom is a unique set of tools that you bring to this team, and I want to see how they're used. I disagreed with one comment that was going through the Twitch thread a little bit, and Bernd Dershberger had it about Dom doesn't fit what Frank de Boer wants. I think Frank likes wingers or wide players who can win 1v1s, and Jurgen Damm can do that. I think where Jurgen Damm is winning his 1v1, if he wins it and goes out wide to put in a cross, maybe that's not what you want. If he wins the 1v1s to go to goal, yes, that's what you want. So he can win 1v1s, and that's what you want players to do in the system. He just does it a little bit differently. I mean, Jurgen Damm doesn't have to have 5 step-overs and fake a player out. He can do the very simple touch it past you and run past you. He's got that kind of speed. So he's going to give you 1v1 ability. He can be effective there.
2 more on my end, and on the second one, I need you to look at the photo on Twitter.
Okay.
Rich Ransom says he wants the Union to win on Monday because of the standings, but Orlando's good, and maybe bracket math might be to at least a draw. And then I always told you...
I'm really looking forward to that game.
And he says, then I always told you the Union are elite. The elite. And then the last one on my end is Tafka, and he posted a photo from at Braves and Birds that looks like...
I'm looking at it now. Let me try to make sense of this from a audio standpoint with a visual photo. So Tafka tweeted yesterday during the full-time report, this team does not attempt to get in behind. This team does not rely upon a target man to get heads on crosses. This team does not take quality shots from outside the 18. This team passes around and tries to beat a player 1v1 into the 18. They do that. That's for sure. The photo is from yesterday's game, which I think you have to take a little bit with a grain of salt because of the 10v11. But yes, I agree with Tafka. The team doesn't rely upon a target man. It wasn't asking Joseph to be a target man, so that hasn't changed. The team does not take quality shots from outside the 18. We haven't seen Pitti shoot from outside the 18 much in this tournament. but he's typically criticized for shooting from outside the 18, so I don't know. They do need to take more shots from outside the 18. I agree. That shouldn't be your primary. That's a secondary thing that can break down a defense, that can get them to step out further. It's like a basketball shooter is going to shoot from distance to try to open things up behind the defense. Definitely that. It has to go hand in hand. You can't rely on shots like Frankie Amaya's yesterday to win a bunch of games. That's not an offense that's going to be successful. But yes, you do need more shots from outside the 18. I agree. The team does not attempt to get in behind. They're only relying on the 1v1. That's the biggest difference right now. We saw it in the... I'm trying to think of some examples. Look at the Joseph goal in Cincinnati last year. That was the very long combination play with Pitti, where they played through the defense on a counter. Pitti with a great ball into Joseph in behind. Think of some of I think it was against Motagua in Kennesaw this season, with Pitti and Joseph combining to play in and get in behind. You can get in behind without just a through ball. You can do it through combination play. That hasn't happened in these two games. Again, yesterday, harder to do because with 10, but it hasn't happened. It has been 2 1v1. It's been 2 isolated, 2 iso ball, if you want to go with another basketball term. You can do it in a couple of different ways. Also, shooting from distance will help open it up. But you have to, if the 1v1, Pitti 1v1 with a defender, if you're asking him, beat the 1v1, beat the defender, win the 1v1 duel, and shoot, you're not getting as many chances that way. You need somebody for him to play off of in that scenario, as we saw with Joseph against Motagua. I loved what the Pitti-Joseph combination was turning into with Barco running 2. I loved what that was turning into. We haven't seen Pitti and Barco a whole lot. I don't think they've played 90 minutes in these two games together yet. Maybe close to it. You need them to combine more. They felt like they're separate. Like one's on one side, one's on the other. They're on islands. You don't need that. You need them to combine. Most importantly, you need somebody else to combine with them. I'll go back to Adam John. I think Adam John is not Joseph. Maybe he's not the one who gets in behind on that ball, but he might be the one you combine with to get in behind. If he becomes the wall in the wall pass, okay. It can't just be 1v1, you're on an island, you have to win the battle and get the shot off. You can use the 1v1 to create a combination. You can use the 1v1 to create a long shot. You can use the 1v1 to beat the defender and get in and go. You can do all of that. Go back to the 1v1 that Joe Jiao won yesterday, I believe against Castillo, and then played Kubo in. We're not getting that part of it right now. It feels too isolated. Some of that is down to rhythm and combinations that are not happening at the moment. That's an area that does have to improve. Tafka's in on that for sure, and I agree with that. It's too isolated. Yesterday, again, you're 10. You have to be more isolated because you've lost a player. So what Frank said about he thought Pitti and Barco would be better in those 1v1 situations. Yesterday, 10v11, that's true. You're not looking for a whole bunch of chances because you're not going to find them. You're not playing the same way. You can't get the third man involved as easily. You're asking Pitti or Barco to win a 1v1 and get us a goal out of it. That's what happens when you're with 10. You saw more combination play on Saturday, but it wasn't as good as it's been in the past. That's something that the team has to improve upon. But don't take yesterday as the only reason why that's an issue, because it was going to be an issue yesterday if you were playing well or not. You had 10 men. Does that make sense? Does that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it does. No, it does. Then Michael's back in, and I'm going to put a bow on Twitter before I get into some of our Juicebox stuff before we go.
Okay.
Michael says, thanks, guys, for responding to my rants today. As you can tell, the two L's have gutted me. Y'all always do a great job. Thanks for allowing us fans to vent and try to calm us down.
No, Michael, you're awesome. I hope you understood what I was saying earlier from my opinion earlier about that. So that's what we did. That's what this game is. I mean, that's, I think, what's so interesting about soccer is you can look at it because of your playing background or your coaching background or your teams that you identify with or whatever, just your opinions on the game. It's not as cut and dried as American football. It's not as cut and dried as baseball. It's not as cut and dried as hockey or basketball. There's a whole lot open to interpretation. And that's what it is. You can take Pep Guardiola, Jurgen Klopp, Jose Mourinho, Bob Bradley, and Bruce Arena and put them together and have them watch a game and write a report on it. And you might think that they watched 5 different games.
Mm-hmm.
And that's great. That's what this sport is about. That's why you see national writers write about Atlanta one way. That's why you see local writers write about Atlanta a different way. That's why you see 5 different local writers write about the team 5 different ways. People who talk about the team talk about it in different ways. It's interpretation. And when things aren't going well and everybody's looking even more in depth, they're going to pull different things out of it. I try to make it clear this is my interpretation of the situation, that is. And I try to make it clear where I think facts affect my interpretation and try to bring the conversation to those as much as we can, because there are certain things that you can misinterpret if the facts are not brought into that part of the conversation. Like the 10v11 thing. I mean, it is what it is. You're playing with 10. Your chances of doing anything good have dramatically diminished. The earlier the red card, the more they diminish. Just nothing you can do about it.
Juice box numbers really quickly before we go in. Starting lineups are out also for Courage and Thorns at 12:30 Eastern.
Is Bella Bixby starting for the Thorns?
That would be a no.
She was a question. Is Lindsey Horan starting for the Thorns?
Yes.
Okay, Sinclair?
Yes, captain.
Yeah. Horan was a question, and Bixby was a question. Bixby had earned the starting job in the tournament. I hate when we get piled up with stuff and we don't get to talk NWSL in this way. North Carolina should take care of business even with Bixby in, but without Bixby, I think it's a better chance. Portland needs to be boring today. They need to sit back. They need to protect as much as they can. They take it to penalties, they're happy. But I don't think they're able to do that against North Carolina. I think the Courage are too good and will open the game up. I'll go 2-0 Courage.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. MLS numbers, we mentioned New England at a plus 104. The other 8 o'clock game, Sporting, is a minus 110 against Colorado. Colorado plus 264 to win. Your draws at plus 282. And the nightcap, RSL, Minnesota United, RSL plus 167, Minnesota United plus 147. So, folks, it looks like they're leaning draw there.
Okay.
Let's see. USL Championship, 3 games tonight, but the game that you and I will be calling tomorrow night a little after 7:30, Atlanta United 2, Memphis 901. Atlanta United 2 plus 110, Memphis 901 plus 204, and your draw option is at plus 252.
They don't know anything on that one, do they?
No, and the numbers today for NWSL coming up at 12:30. Courage to win minus 333, Thorns to win plus 860, and your draws at plus 359.
The other games tonight for NWSL, Houston and Utah, 3-3 in the first time in this tournament between them. I think Utah's gotten better and Houston's gotten worse, so I'll go Royals to win that one. And then tomorrow morning we're going to do a Match Day Power Hour at 10 o'clock, so we'll talk about the 2 games tomorrow in NWSL. At that point, we'll recap MLS from today and we'll do this all over again.
Yep.
Let me see if there's anything else in Twitch before we finish that is critical. Y'all have had some good conversation. Thanks for hanging out in the Twitch room. I'm glad that's turned into like a clubhouse for conversation around the show and not just the show. So thank you for hanging out.
You mentioned NWSL real quick while you're searching for stuff.
Go ahead.
Apparently, there is now a movement afoot where folks are pooling together their dollars for a charity donation if a particular player scores and goes and celebrates on the kids' swing set, and it is now over $1,000, and it started earlier this morning. So, and that has been growing. So, if a player in this tournament goes over to the kids' equipment and celebrates, I guess that player gets to name a charity, and the donations that are growing will go to that particular charity. So that was a groundswell, and that was a grassroots thing that started literally this morning, and it's already over $1,200.
Nice. Two to finish off. Jason Nix on Twitch. Do you think the quality of our team is worse, as good, or better than the end of last year? Purely player talent. It's a little hard to say because we haven't seen much of Castro. We've seen a little more of Josetu. We've seen plenty of Lennon. Heinemann was here last year. We've seen plenty of Meza. I don't think it's worse. Is it better? I don't know that yet. For it to be better, one of two things. Because Nagbe is the toughest one to replace. He is. I think the way they're playing, Villalba would not have had much of an impact in this team. Now, he would have been, and he didn't know this at the time. He wanted playing time. Well, he would have had it, I think, up top in this formation with Joseph injured, but he didn't know Joseph was going to get injured. So, as a wide player, he wasn't going to play as a wing back. It didn't work against NYC last year. He wanted playing time. So I don't think he would have factored in. Nagbe would have been one of the holding midfielders in this. We saw it last year when the team played this way. He would have played in one of those roles. LGP, Meza, I think it's comparable. They're different players, but I think it's very comparable. I think Meza gives you some things that LGP didn't, and LGP gave you some things that Meza doesn't. I think the trade-off, they're comparable. Nagbe, to replace him, you need Heinemann to play like he did early this season, not like he did against Red Bulls, where he didn't really impact the match too much. You need either Adams to step up more, which I think he stepped up, but he's not Nagbe yet. He's not. Or you need Josetu to play in that role, and we haven't seen that yet at all. I think he can. I think Josetu can be a player who can play in that role and maybe replace some of what Nagbe gave you. But we haven't seen that yet for a variety of reasons. Last one, Kevin from Charlotte on Twitter. He said, I haven't had time to listen to all the podcasts and interviews after yesterday's game, but I'm really tired of seeing excuses anytime Atlanta United doesn't perform up to club standards. Can we stop blaming the refs, VAR, the time, no preseason game prior to the tournament, weather conditions, chemistry with new players, anything else I'm leaving off? All other teams are in the same situation, and the better teams are performing. Atlanta United isn't, and the fans and club shouldn't accept it. I've talked about this a lot, but, Kevin, I don't know what you want me to say. Because saying this sucks, everything sucks, this team should be blown up, it's a short show, and I don't think it's accurate. Leaving the refs out of the conversation in yesterday's game is telling you an incomplete story. The way the penalty was handled was incorrect, according to Howard Webb, the head of pro. It was handled incorrectly. Penalty should have been taken. It wasn't. You get a penalty. We know the percentage of chances that you normally score on a penalty. You didn't get the opportunity. That's part of the story. The lack of a yellow, a second yellow, or red to Deplan. You play 10v10 for the final 30 minutes of the game. It's a different game. That's part of the story. The red card to Mulroney, no argument. The way that the game was called from an officiating standpoint with yellows to Cincinnati, with a lot of fouls, with Remedi being fouled 8 times, with 19 fouls in total, with 2 of the 3 yellows that Cincinnati received, after the 86th minute, that's part of the story. It is. It affects the way the game is played. There's no question about that. The weather conditions were accentuated playing 10v11. You can't argue that. It is. It's harder to play with 10 in good conditions. It gets harder when it's more taxing on your body physically. You can't argue that. There's just nothing around that. Chemistry with new players, it's a fact. You haven't played with those guys. It's part of the story. Just because you talk about parts of the story doesn't mean you are wiping away the fact that Atlanta has not won the individual moments in these two games. Out of the big individual moments in these two games they've played, they won the one with Gazan on the save on Royer. They won the second big save from Gazan. They didn't win the shot and the whole defensive breakdown to lead up to it in the first goal. They didn't win on, I'll say, the two big chances that Castro had. You'd expect at least one of them you put on goal. You didn't win those moments. Red Bulls beat you in the moments. You outperformed Red Bulls in the game. You lost. Yesterday, the red card changes the whole narrative of the game. It does. There's no avoiding that. Playing with 10, you have a far less chance of getting a result. There's no avoiding that. It's not an excuse. It's a fact. You have to change the conversation when you're playing 10v11. It just is. The thing you can't do when there are losses and the team is not performing up to club standards, or the fans shouldn't accept it. It's 2 losses, 1-0. Do you blow it up after 2 losses, 1-0? Do you blow it up after 2 losses, 1-0 when you're missing your best forward? If you do, you're never going to be successful. You won't. You're going to be a Brazilian club that has 6 managers in 2 years. You're going to be a club that rotates players in and out so fast that you get yourself in bad situations. In an MLS with a cap, you can't do that. You can't have money stuck on your cap. You can't get yourself always trying to regroup and rebuild after 2 bad games. You can't. Those things are facts too. When we talk about things that lead to a bad result, it's not always excuses. Anything that goes against the way you see the game or your anger or anything is not an excuse. I'm telling you what I see, and I'm talking about the things that affect the result. If you disagree, that's great. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But you can't diminish and dismiss anything that goes against the way you see it by calling an excuse and saying you can't make excuses. Because then we're only talking one way about everything, and every loss is the end of the world, and it's not. I think we all follow the game, enough and talk about the game in depth enough to know that sometimes you just lose. Sometimes you're the better team and you lose. Sometimes you're the worst team and you win. Sometimes you have a red card in the first half and you blow everything up. These things happen. You can criticize the red card because it changed the game, and Jake Mulroney needs to be criticized for a lot of things in those moments. That's the biggest story from yesterday. The referee part of it, it affected the game. 100% it affected the game. There's no way around it. When a referee calls a game a certain way, it affects the way the game is played. You can't ignore that. So I don't know. If I just make excuses and people don't like that, I hope I'm at least explaining the way I see it enough to where you feel like it's not just an excuse. I hope. If I'm not, I'll try to do better. I mean, that's all I can tell you, but I'm telling you the way I see it, and I'm trying to tell you the things that affect the outcome. And there are things that affect an outcome when you lose that are real. It's more than just saying they played bad. That's part of it. It's not all of it. So I don't know. It's hard. People are frustrated. I get it. People are passionate. I get it. The club has very high standards. So when things happen that are not at those standards, people react. These things are good. but you have to react realistically as well. Because if you overreact or don't look at all the other circumstances, then sometimes you can make bad decisions. You don't want a team to chop managers and keep doing that consistently, because then you get no continuity. You're not an elite team when you do that. This team is trying to be elite. They were earlier. They were coming into the season. They're not now. They're trying to get back to that. You don't get back to that by overreacting. You have to get better. You have to win those individual moments. That's what it comes down to for me.
There you go. We're caught up on Twitter. We're caught up on Twitch, yes?
I think so. I hope so. I hope that all makes sense. And Kevin listens to everything, and Kevin's great. So it's not an attack on Kevin, because Kevin's not the only one who said that. I just hope that I'm giving you more than an excuse. I'm trying to explain the impact of it. So if I'm screwing that up, then I'm sorry. I'm just trying to explain it. And we've explained a lot today, talking with a break due to internet going out, close to 3 hours. So I'm going to go now and try to get caught up on a normal sleep cycle and normal day and get ready for Atlanta United 2 tomorrow. So we'll be back at 10 tomorrow morning with a match day power hour. Not a 3 hour special, a 1 hour special.
No.
1 hour. 10 o'clock tomorrow.
Power,
Twitch. Spreaker.
Power hour.
Yes. There might be stoppage time, but there will not be 3 hours.
Okay.
Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We had a ton of people listening on the radio yesterday. A bunch of y'all were interacting with us. Thank you. We won't get radio ratings until a long time from now. We got some initial streaming numbers, and it was 3 times other hours of the day. And that's really cool. And that's the people who are streaming it on radio.com and the website. So thank you. I know a lot of you guys who listen to the show are part of that. That's why Mike and I get to do what we do, and we are very much appreciative to you guys allowing us to do that. So y'all have a good one. We'll be back tomorrow. Mucha plata, y'all.
Mucha plata, y'all.